So what's a hobby? How do you know if you have a hobby, if you really have a legitimate business and you'd rather get the better tax benefits? Well, guess what? Uncle Sam's out there to help us. The IRS has made it quite clear. And if you want to, we'll look at page 12. You want to take something past them there? Page 12. I have more from home. Pass this down. Basically, I list the criteria the IRS uses to determine whether something is a hobby, and actually they are asking you to determine whether it's a hobby or not. If you're audited, of course, they go through this kind of stuff with you. But page 12 discusses the criteria, the definition of a hobby. Basically, one of the bottom lines is, what's your motivation? Are you doing it to make money? It's a business. If you're doing it, you don't care about the money, it's a hobby. Okay. My daughter's piano teacher is a train nut. He has this huge, train display in his basement. Does he do that for money? No, he does that strictly for the love of his hobby. So it's your motivation. Pleasure, business. Now in writing, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes. We're okay with getting paid, right? Sometimes the amount of time or effort you put into it will flip from being just a hobby to something a little more serious. The expertise you have and you pursue. If you start going to writers' conferences and pursuing the craft of writing, you might move out of hobby into business. And I am here to encourage you to move away from calling yourself a hobby writer to considering a business. If you conduct yourself in a business-like manner, the IRS would consider that a business. You consult with a professional to get help. You read a book like that. You have a website. You publicize. Things that look like a business, the IRS will say, oh, good, you're a business. And you want to be considered a business. And if you have other sources of income, if you are obviously dependent upon your writing for a significant amount of your income, it's going to be pretty obvious to the IRS you're not a hobbyist, you're really a writer. Okay? Questions about that? I've got one more on the next page. Yeah, Lois?
Well, I always have a little problem with it because my writing is kind of like the locust, the 7-year locust
Right.
or something.
Sporadic.
And it's, I'll get a good year and then I may end up not selling it. I mean, I may end up not even writing anything for a year.
Right. And maybe that year it was a hobby because you lost your motivation. But maybe the year that you made money, you can go back and forth.
So what happens to your business status when your business isn't doing business?
Nothing. Just goes on hold. You just don't fill out the business part of the tax return that year.
Okay, just like that.
If you're relatively small and, we can talk more details, but yeah.
Well, our tax preparer kind of handles all that sort of stuff, and sometimes
But ask him someday.
I'll send him the $65 this year, and
Right.
I say, well,
I know, and we as tax preparers roll our eyes, but we have to do what Uncle Sam says, even though we disagree.
yeah. Well,
He
he does
have
it.
to do
He
it.
makes sure, did you sell anything?
Yeah. Yeah.
$1.98. Put it in.
Yeah, my royalty check was $3.98. To continue the definition, the IRS does look at a prior history of profits or success. There you kind of, what you were kind of saying. Some years I have success and some years I don't. Sometimes you hear this little phrase batted around about 3 out of 5 years. I don't know if you've ever read anything about hobby income or something like that. And it gets confused. I think people misuse it. So let me just read this and explain it. But basically, the IRS presumes that an activity is carried on for profit, meaning a business. They assume it's a business if it makes a profit in at least 3 of the last 5 years, including the current year. That's from the IRS website. So this 3 of 5 year test is to test whether you have a business, not to test whether you have a hobby. So basically, that's my conclusion there. If you made money in 3 of the last 5 years, voila, you're not a hobby, you're a business. Now some people get that confused and they think, oh, I lost money for 4 years, I'm not a business anymore, I'm a hobby. No, businesses can lose money every year and still be a business. Okay? They can. All this 3 of 5 year rule says is that if you made money in 3 of 5 years, call yourself a business and get the better tax benefit for it.